FPL Game Week 36 Transfer Plans. Last week I played my wildcard, so today we're going to have a look how my team is lining up for Game Week 36, what my potential transfers are this week and for the rest of the season as well, with just 3 weeks left to go now. There have been additional FPL yellow flags, orange flags added to the likes of Fabian Schär, Edison, who were very popular on wildcard. Of course, Phil Foden missed out completely for Manchester City on Sunday evening as well. So today we'll be having a look at that. We'll be discussing who the top players to buy as some of those replacements are over the next couple of weeks in my Game Week 36 first transfer plans. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. And Game Week 35, Wildcard Week, is going okay. We have one game to go, of course, the big one, which is Chelsea Spurs, where a lot of those double game week players, well, all of those double game week players that hopefully we wildcarded into get some points, because so far, Son is the only player on wildcard that has got any points that has a double game week. So let's hope for some more points in that game. I'm currently sat on 51 points, 46 plus 5 points for my Haaland auto sub, with Phil Foden missing out in the squad completely. While we're on that subject, apparently Phil Foden is just ill. Apparently had a stomach bug last week. He managed to play against Brighton, but it missed out in the game against Nottingham Forest. So we are expecting Phil Foden back for Game Week 36. So nothing to worry about there. He's currently in my lineup at the moment, playing a 3-5-2 formation. Currently, of course, at the moment, I have Edison in goal, and we'll talk about him in a little bit more detail in a moment, but he is yellow flagged at the moment. In defence, we've got Dan Burn and then the double Arsenal defence. Very happy that Spurs did get that goal late, well, in the second half, got those 2 goals, because I benched my double Arsenal in place of Dalot and Dan Burn. Did make the switch for Schär to Dan Burn on my deadline stream in order to fund Vicario overgoing with Petrovic. Hasn't really made many difference in terms of points, but Fabian Schär at the moment is yellow flagged with a bit of an injury to his hamstring, apparently. Of course, I'm happy that double Arsenal are coming in at home to Bournemouth. It's a good fixture. They are great defensively, and no one seems to be keeping clean sheets at the moment. Not even them this week, but they have to be the most reliable at the moment. Into midfield, it is a midfield 5, so we've got Foden, Son, Gordon, Fernandes, and Palmer, with Isaac and Erling Haaland up front. Of course, Haaland didn't start, but you've got to expect him now to be starting back for Manchester City in Game Week 36 at home to Wolves. I am benching Nicholas Jackson of Chelsea at home to West Ham, Diego Dalot, and then, of course, my double Spurs defence in Porro and Vicario away at Liverpool. The only real debate I've got is, do I start Nicholas Jackson this week? The only player that potentially I could bench is Gordon. Gordon's home form is fantastic. We saw that again in Game Week 35. He does go away to Burnley this week, who have been unbeaten in 7 games, and Gordon's away form is not quite as good, but having watched Jackson miss the chances he missed once again at the weekend, at the moment it is Jackson on the bench with Gordon starting. Now, I mentioned so many times on videos last week, build a wildcard draft. You are happy to burn the transfer in Game Week 37 if nothing goes wrong. Don't book in transfers because something will go wrong. And this week, something has gone wrong. Edison looks like he's picked up an injury and I might need to sell him. There is a chance, of course, that I could bench him, but the issue with that is Vicario sat on my bench has Liverpool away this week, so I don't really want to do that. Either I need Edison to play this week or I need to sell him is my plan. So having a look at potential Edison replacement. So we saw him at full time or after the game leaving the stadium in a sling. So that doesn't bode well for him playing between now and the end of the season, given the season ends in about 3 weeks' time. So the chances of Edison featuring this weekend are very, very low. Chances of him featuring in Game Week 37 in the double are low. And the chances of him featuring before the end of the season are pretty low as well. Pep did say it doesn't look good for him. He picked it up in the first half, tried to play on, but it was subbed at half time. Now, we will have a press conference on Friday from Pep where he might give us a bit of an update, training photos, things like that. There are 2 replacements that I have in my mind that I would sell him to, depending on what the severity of news is. If there was a chance that Edison played again this season but was out this weekend, I would likely go to Petrovic of Chelsea. Of course, has a West Ham at home this week, which is better than Vicario. I almost own Petrovic on my wild card, and I could just go with him because I do have a spare Chelsea slot at the moment. Decent fixtures between now and the end of the season, but part of the reason I didn't want to own him on my wild card actually was the risk of Sanchez coming in and taking that spot at Chelsea. I still think there's a decent chance that that happens for one of the remaining games if Sanchez gets himself back fit. Of course, at the moment, he's only taking part in partial Chelsea training. So Petrovic would go if there's a chance that Ederson plays again this season. If Ederson gets ruled out for the season, I'm almost certain that I would do Ederson to Ortega. That frees up almost 2 million. That's really helpful for transfers in game week 38. Buying back the likes of Saka, maybe Havertz going in on Liverpool potentially for their final games at home in game week 38. So if we think that Ederson might play again this season, so it's uncertain how many games Ortega would play, then I'd probably buy Petrovic. If not, I'd buy Ortega. The fixtures look good for them. 2 home games in the 2 single weeks, and then, of course, a double in game week 37. Frees up a lot of money. If Ederson is out, it just makes sense. Now, given that my transfer plans are a little bit simple this week, it's either roll or sell my goalkeeper. Try and make this video a little bit more useful for you, which we do sometimes. Try and cover a few of the questions that you guys are asking. So I posted the tweet on X or Twitter and on YouTube as well, asking for some key questions. First of all was, who are the teams that we should be looking to target between now and the end of the season? So what we've got here is from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. It is the fixture between now and the end of the season ranked by difficulty. So difficulty both for attack and defense combined. Looking at this, of course, the teams with the double do go to the top naturally because they have an extra fixture. So the chance of them having a good run of results or getting points in FPL are higher because they do have a good run. Now, Newcastle are top, Chelsea and then Manchester City, which is part of the reason when I look at Ederson replacements, I can't buy the Newcastle goalkeeper because I've got triple Newcastle. I look at Chelsea and Manchester City, who are the next two in Ortega and in Petrovic, because they have nice run of fixtures between now and the end of the season. Brighton go next, but I wouldn't be touching Brighton at all. Look completely on the beach, defending horribly, attacking horribly at the moment. They are complete avoids for me. Manchester United are next. They're very mixed. I think Bruno and maybe one defender is fine, which is what I've got. But I'm not massively sure they look that great. And their points are not consistent at the moment. Garnacho unlucky not to get very much at the weekend. He could have definitely got some returns. And he's a nice, cheap enabler. But they look very off it. And Arsenal, Newcastle, Palace away, Brighton away. Like I've said, Brighton on the beach. So maybe that's not that bad. But the fixtures around that, they're not that great. So someone like Fernandes is fine. A defender is fine. But I wouldn't be expecting the world from them. Nottingham Forest is an interesting one, particularly if you don't need them. If you're free hitting or not bench boosting in game week 37 when they play Chelsea at home, even that they could win. Sheffield United and Burnley in the other 2 games, and they're fighting for their lives at the bottom of the table. Could have some decent punts on the likes of Chris Wood or Morgan Gibbs-White. Spurs next with the double. Most of you already own them. To be honest, it looks like Richarlison should come back in. And then it is Son, of course. I wouldn't bother investing defensively if you haven't done already. Then it's Arsenal, and then it's Brentford. Brentford didn't look that great when Ivan Toney came back into the team actually at the weekend. Arsenal are the other one. Once you go later down the list, there are a few differentials you could potentially look at, like a Fulham, for example. You could go and have a look at Muniz, who did get back in the returns. Everton as well have been great, but Everton are now safe, so I wouldn't massively rely on them for consistent performances now that they have fought to stay in the Premier League for another season. So in terms of single game week teams, Nottingham Forest potentially, Arsenal potentially as well, but I still would be focusing your transfers on maybe the top 8 teams here, particularly those with a double. And then just a few more specific questions to answer for you all. First of all is Shah and Gusto. Gusto, we are expecting back in game week 36. He did tell a fan last weekend that he'd be out for the next couple, so he shouldn't play Spurs, but he might be back for game week 36. Shah, not sure. It was a hamstring injury, apparently, but he has recovered very quickly in the past. It's very boring to say wait, but I think there's a decent chance that both Shah and Gusto will play in game week 36. So do wait for the press conferences, but I would hold out a little bit of hope on them. Ederson, on the other hand, the other big injury, I'm not very confident at all, as I've already spoken about. We've also spoken a little about Arsenal. Should you be considering buying Arsenal assets? Absolutely. Are there any teams that when you look at that fixture ticker, you expect to keep more clean sheets than Arsenal between now and the end of the season? Maybe Manchester City is the only one. If you don't have a Manchester City defender, you could consider one. Gvardiol looks good. Kyle Walker looks good. And then the goalkeeper, if Ortega is going to play the rest of the season, are the top 3 that you'd consider. Gvardiol with the points this week. It was Walker last week. Still think Kyle Walker is maybe the one to go with because he's slightly more nailed, but you could go either and you could get lucky either way. Going into Arsenal is still a good plan. I've got double up and I'm happy with that. In attack, I still think Havertz and Saka, Havertz particularly, being a cheaper price, playing up front, looks great for them. As a Chelsea fan, it pains me to say it, but he looks great. He looks like such a player at the moment. So he is great. The only issue is there are a lot of midfielders in FPL at the moment. It is hard to fit him in, but he's definitely worth considering as a differential if you are chasing, because very few people are going to be able to buy him. And then the other one is, should you keep Chelsea and Spurs players for the final few weeks, given their performances? Now, to be honest, they have just both had their most difficult game, probably. Chelsea going away to Villa and then Spurs going away, well, Spurs playing Arsenal are their most difficult games, you'd probably say, between now and the end of the season. Spurs do have to play City, but as part of a double, which also includes Burnley at home. So I wouldn't judge them on this. If going into Thursday night, they continue to underperform, then maybe consider it. But when you've only got like 2 free transfers left between now and the end of the season, selling players who have a double and do have some decent fixtures, right? So Jackson and, potentially if you're looking at Brennan Johnson, if you're looking at your Spurs defenders, they have some decent fixtures between now and the end of the season. Chelsea have Forest, Brighton, West Ham and Bournemouth. You look at your Spurs assets, they have Burnley at home, Sheffield United away between now and the end of the season as well. So I would hold off selling them. If you want differentials, go for it, but I don't think it's a good use of a transfer now. So looking at my team, it was going to be boring. My plan was to roll the transfer this week. Now with Ederson out, it's likely I have to sell him. If we get confirmation he's not going to play against Wolves. Petrovic, if Ederson is not ruled out for the season, then I'll go Petrovic of Chelsea. If he's ruled out for the season, then I will go Ortega at Manchester City at 3.7 million. In terms of captaincy, with Haaland back, I'm sure he'll start against Wolves next week. He is going to be my captain this week. Isaac, with his run of form, likely to be my vice captain this week. Haaland versus Foden is actually an interesting debate for captaincy. When they both play, Foden has been very, very good. So there is part of my mind that would think maybe Foden, but I think it will stay on Haaland. Palmer also in with a shout, but I need to see some returns against Spurs for me to consider that. West Ham potentially with only one game a week. Can they get a few better performances under their belt? Maybe we saw it against Liverpool when they only had one game a week, slightly better than they had been over the past few weeks. So I think it will be on Haaland. He found the back of the net off the bench against Nottingham Forest. Isaac currently the vice captain, and then I'll just be waiting for Ederson news. So drop any questions you have, whether you're planning, whether you're on chips this week, drop it all in the comment section down below. 1,000 likes is the aim. Let me know how you've got on so far in game week 35, how many points you are, how many players you got left as well, which is the big one on Thursday evening, Chelsea versus Spurs. I cannot wait. It's always a big, big game. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back again very soon.